It's quite a view from this overlook called Dante's View. This is the first stop we made when we visited Death Valley on March 2nd, 2016. Death Valley has no outlet to the sea. Minerals washed down from the mountains are here to stay. The Panamint mountain range in the distance is rising while the valley floor continues to sink. However, eroding material from the Black Mountains, here under our feet, is filling the valley at about the same rate as the valley is sinking, so everything seems to stay about the same. Death Valley was given its forbidding name by a group of pioneers lost in the valley during the winter of 1849 to 1850. While only one member of the group died here, they all assumed the valley would be their grave. Rescued by two young scouts, as the party climbed out of the valley over the Panamint Mountains, seen here in the distance, one of the men turned, looked back, and said, "Goodbye, Death Valley." The name and the story has become part of our Western history. This view shows the road that leads to the ridge at the top of the Black Mountains to the overlook we have been standing at. The objective of the road is to deliver us to Dante's viewpoint. However, the view off the backside of the station is also good. The peak on the mountain in front of us is named Coffin Peak. I don't know if it has any connection to the lost 49ers who gave the park its name or not. Our next stop in Death Valley took us to this place called Zabriskie Point. The point was named for Christian Zabriskie, Vice President and General Manager of the Pacific Coast Borax Company. Borax was mined very close to this location. The otherworldly badlands we see here are deathly silent and still, except for the constant parade of tourists who fill the pathways. Yet this arid scene is the result of the often violent action of water and earthquakes. An information sign nearby says that 3 to 5 million years ago, this place was underwater. Silt and volcanic ash began to fill the lake. Seismic activity and pressure tilted these layers and pushed them upward as the valley sunk. As the layers of clay, sandstone, and siltstone uplifted, they were exposed to periodic rainstorms that caused powerful gully washers. This eroded the soft rocks into the chaotic, yet strangely beautiful, landscape we see today. The minerals that make up the compound borax were leached out of these golden canyons over eons of time. Borax was first discovered in a crystallized form on the salt flats. However, mining the rich layers of colemanite and ulexite, minerals referred to as borax, proved to be more profitable than reclaiming the crystals from the salt flats. That gave rise to the very popular and well-known 20 mule team haulers in an era before trucks. For me, the real reason we came to Death Valley was to see the flowers. For the first time in more than a decade, the typically barren terrain of the valley was bursting with color. The October 2015 cloud-busting rainstorms, combined with additional winter storms and warm spring sunshine, had created a breathtaking sight in Death Valley for our visit in early March 2016. I was excited that this would be a good flower season. It was difficult to find lodging near the park since tourists from all over the world were flocking here to see the phenomenon known as superbloom. Dominating the landscapes were these most abundant, brilliant yellow flowers known as desert gold, scattered on the valley floor. Sparsely scattered in selected spots of gravel and small rocks were these beauties called pebble pincushion. Many desert wildflowers have a protective coating on their seeds that prevents them from germinating unless the odds are very good there will be enough moisture to bring them to maturity. Could this be intelligence programmed into their spirits in their pre-earth creation? We take a side trip now off the Badwater Road where we have been ogling over the flowers. This detour takes us to the Devil's Golf Course. The Devil's Golf Course is a large salt pan on the floor of Death Valley. It extends for a distance of about 40 miles. The salt pan is essentially a gigantic, dried-up bed of a lake that once covered the valley to a depth of 30 feet. 2,000 to 4,000 years ago, the lake dried up, leaving behind the dissolved minerals. The salt pan is so incredibly serrated that the 1934 National Park Service guidebook to Death Valley National Monument stated that only the devil could play golf on its surface. Shortly after, the salt pan became known as the Devil's Golf Course. Now back to the Badwater Road and the flowers which drew us to the park in the first place. The seeds that kindled these flowers in 2016 may have been in the desert soil lying dormant for many years, perhaps even for decades. The reports from the Park Service give credit to the wild October 2015 storms for the colorful fields of flowers that are on display now. This patch of rocky soil is shared by the yellow desert gold flowers, the white flowers called gravel ghosts, and the purple ones, which I think are called blue or notchleaf phacelias. These next photos were all taken along the Badwater Road. Great extremes characterize Death Valley. It is the hottest, driest, and lowest national park. Elaine stands at a place that tells it all, the lowest and the hottest and the driest. Behind her, the area that looks like a huge concrete runway is nothing more than the result of where tens of thousands of feet have trampled down the salt crust, creating this wide, salt-dusty path. What little water there is here at Badwater is of ancient origin. Rather than rain accumulation, as we might think, the water seeps up from underground, much of it beginning as ice and snow in the mountains of central Nevada, hundreds of miles away and many seasons ago. Water is rare and precious in Death Valley. A government surveyor mapping this area could not get his mule to drink from this pool. He wrote on his map that the spring had bad water, and the name stuck. The water is not poisonous, just very salty. This picture requires a minute of concentration to figure it out. Dead center in the picture, on an outcropping of rock, there is what appears to be a white line. Actually, the line is a printed pair of words which says sea level. That spot marks where the normal top of the ocean would be, were it to reach into this valley, some 282 feet above where we are standing. The surface on which we are standing is just one huge salt flat. While there is some calcite, gypsum, and borax mixed in with the dirt, the vast majority of the stuff is sodium chloride, better known as ordinary table salt. The next segment of our Death Valley trip is on a loop drive called Artist's Palette. The flower bloom is very sparse here, but very beautiful against a picturesque mountainous backdrop. I could have spent many hours here seeking out individual flowers to display against the rich chocolate mountain. Occasionally, little patches of flowers showed up in a concentrated burst of color. Looking across the field, a little tinge of yellow hints that there are quite a few lone flowers on this whole desert floor. The mountains are beautiful and reach out to greet us on every side. This plant is unique to the desert. called desert holly, it has no relation to holly. Its leaves reflect the sun to reduce the plant's need for water, and the leaves turn their edges to the sun rather than their surfaces, as most plants do. Many of the washes and gullies on the Artist Palette Drive held a multitude of blooms because that's where most of the water concentrates. While there were no established paths at the places we stopped to take pictures, most of the tourists were careful to choose walking routes that would not harm the blooming plants. Sometimes it doesn't take a field full of blooms to please our senses. A single plant is as gorgeous as a world full of them. But then again, when you stumble upon a gully that looks like a river of blooms flowing toward a lake, could any vista be more spectacular? The Artist Palette Drive truly did display a natural artist palette of color splashed across the landscape. More than 5 million years ago, repeated volcanic eruptions blanketed the landscape, depositing ash and minerals. The volcanic minerals were chemically altered by heat and water. Chemical analyses have identified a paint pot of elements: iron, aluminum, magnesium, and titanium, but no copper. Some of the colored minerals here include red hematite and green chlorite. Whatever it is, the colors seem to change with the time of day and the intensity of the shifting light. Our road trip now brings us to another area in the park known as the Beatty Cutoff Road. Along this road, the fields of desert gold bloom seem to be more dense than they were near other roads we followed. I'm not sure what this tumbleweed-looking plant is. A desert ghost flower takes up residency along one of these golden-top shrubs. Since it was the time when presidential candidates were stumping for a spot on the election ticket, I had no trouble associating this plant with the Donald Trump hair look. With that out-of-context observation, I was saddened that our trip through Death Valley had come to an end. It was a wonderful experience through another of God's handiworks, which provides variety to His children on their mortal journey.